You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter, at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, Bob Harris, at Football Diehard. Our executive producer is on the line tonight, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, at FF Kyle the Kid on Twitter. Mr. Harris, it's week 5 already. You're busy, you're tired, you're grinding. What's good in New Mexico?
Everything football related. It's a nonstop wheel of joy, and it's rolling my way. And if I don't step aside, I'll get run over. But let's jump right into the festivities. I know a lot of people will be listening to this after Thursday, but there is a Thursday night game that's kind of interesting. The New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts. T.Y. Hilton, not sure if he's going to play. Not sure Marlon Mack's going to make it. Seems like Jack Doyle won't make it. Adam Vinatieri turned up on the injury report. So there's a lot going on with the Colts. I don't want to get too deep into that, but I want to look at the other side because there's some more something with a little more shelf life than the game time decisions. Of course, Rob Gronkowski listed as questionable. Sounds like he'll play. He also didn't practice on Tuesday this week, so we'll see if he plays. But I think in general, we've got some players returning from suspension this week, and Julian Edelman would be one of them. We've seen Gronk kind of limited because teams are, double, triple covering him. Let's say we get Julian Edelman back. We start integrating Josh Gordon, who saw his first work in the offense last week, a pretty limited role, but we saw him, guy capable of taking the top off of defense. What are the expectations for Gronk with the return and the addition of some of these components, Justin?
Well, I was there Sunday. It was a lovely experience at the DraftKings suite, and it was just an absolute bloodbath. And before the game, it was just, this is a playoff game, there's a playoff game, there's a playoff game. And they just did what the Patriots typically do. I think they're easing Josh Gordon in, which is nice. I think that we're seeing Sony Michel. He's going to get the football quite a bit. He's the Dion Lewis replacement. But with Julian Edelman coming back, and you guys know that I like to talk about nonverbal communication between these quarterbacks and wide receivers, and I think that Tom Brady and Julian Edelman are the high standard for that. So it's certainly going to help everybody else out. We know James White has a bona fide role, and it's nice to see what Philip Dorsett is doing as well. So there's some balance in the backfield. It doesn't sound great about Gronk. I know it's early in the week, but this guy has a history of being dinged up. So, whether Gronk plays, obviously you want Rob Gronkowski to play. But, look, Julian Edelman is a huge, huge piece of this offense. And I think that Sunday was, opened all of our eyes. And it's the Patriots aren't going anywhere. So it was nice to see, to say the least.
All right. So my feeling is that to answer the question is, yes, Gronk will benefit from a full cast. Yep. Kyle, looking at New Orleans, Alvin Kamara has been going great guns. Does Mark Ingram's return make him better, or does it limit to him? Is it addition by subtraction in terms of his touches? Can he be more effective? What are your expectations here? And again, just to stipulate, we're not really sure yet what kind of roles either of these guys coming off suspension will play this week. I suspect they'll both see action, but maybe not the full load. But over the course of time, Kyle.
Yeah, to answer your question, will it make him better? I won't say it'll make him better because that would imply that his efficiency goes up, and that's hard to predict. Efficiency isn't very sticky in terms of the statistics we have available to us. I'm not going to bank on that going up, but really his value this year has come from, I would say, of any player we've seen, maybe him and David Johnson from a few years ago, essentially playing a position we don't have a name for yet. He's just getting so many passes. Through 4 weeks, he's really made most of his value through the receiving game. Right now, he's only got 14 touches, 14 carries per game, which isn't bell cow back status. It's good, but it's nothing crazy. So I really think that while it won't make him more valuable, so much of his value has come from a place that Mark Ingram doesn't excel at and something that Alvin Kamara can still do as Mark Ingram's back, that it's a small knock on his value at best, and he's still one of the 3 best running backs.
They were both top 10 last year, right? I mean, in fantasy circles, they had phenomenal 2017 seasons, which I don't think it can be sustained this year, but it's a different Saints offense. where they're running the football. And historically, we've just seen Drew Brees kind of sling it around.
All right. Hugh Jackson says this guy, meaning Nick Chubb, needs to get a little. He's scoring touchdowns from a long ways away. This guy is coming on. We saw 3 touches, 3 carries, 100+ yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, totally unsustainable production. But Carlos Hyde's playing reasonably well at this point. If you're a Carlos Hyde owner, Justin, how worried are you about Chubb? It seems like. A couple of weeks ago, I started talking about the Sony Michel train leaving the station.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Did we just see the Nick Chubb train, fire up the steamer and they're getting ready to hit the throttle?
No. I mean, we saw Carlos Hyde get paid by the Browns. We saw Duke Johnson get paid. Duke Johnson's been a little disappointment in his involvement. But your friend, Matt Waldman, is high on Nick Chubb as high as anybody. I think that when you look at Carlos Hyde, a healthy Carlos Hyde in his prime, he's going to get the ball just about as much as any running back in the NFL. So I don't know, you guys, I like to say ambiguous, and I think that's one of those situations. But it would behoove the Cleveland Browns to obviously involve Chubb in the game plan, ease him in. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see how the touches amongst Hyde, Chubb, and Duke Johnson are distributed. It's kind of an ultimate committee there.
Well, the 3 bean salad I find delightful. The 3 backfields I find less so. Right. 2 is about my max limit, which we see. Look, in Denver they're making this work with Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. Yep. I still like Freeman an awful lot, but they're making this work. Kyle, another backfield that's kind of getting drawing some interest. And look, when you have your first 100-yard rushing game in 5 years, you're going to draw a little interest. And that's the Detroit Lions. Mm-hmm. It was Kerryon Johnson. The talk now is, why isn't he getting more work? Because, look, it's, he and LeGarrette Blount continue to split the early down work. Theo Riddick's still getting more snaps, the bulk of the snaps in his satellite role. Is Kerryon Johnson a guy worth keeping on the radar as a potential down the stretch league winner for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, worth keeping on the radar. He's, especially if you're beat up at running back, he's worth keeping on the roster at the end of your bench. He's gotten, looking at his game log, he's gotten 9 attempts, not great. 16 attempts before that was the 100-yard game, the big breaker. And he's also been used at least a little bit in the receiving game. He's had multiple games with 3 or more receptions, and he's got a touchdown to his name now. There are multiple avenues for him to score fantasy points, both in the receiving and rushing game, and scoring touchdowns. Certainly, you're not starting him any week with confidence until they give him a great workload, but if you're beat up at running back, you've got some injuries building, or you even have bye weeks coming up, which we are getting into bye weeks now, he's certainly worth at least a flyer start, and definitely worth keeping on your roster. If he's on your waivers right now, go pick him up.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping that he turns into we'd love to see a lead guy in that offense, and maybe attrition will take care of that at some point. Something attrition is not taking care of is Tyler Eifert. It hit him instead. And look, you hate to see these horrible injuries. I know everyone's going to say the knock on him is he's injury prone or whatever. I don't know how you knock somebody for getting a broken ankle, but nonetheless, he's gone. Tyler Kroft is a guy that came up with, 7 touchdowns last year once he was gone. But I just want a more general question, Justin. This offense has been hitting on all cylinders. You don't replace what Tyler Eifert does. He's a unique chess piece, and that he's capable of running the wide receiver routes in a tight end's body. I don't know that you replace that, but does this hurt guys like Tyler Boyd, who have suddenly risen up and become a pretty viable weekly play? And A.J. Green, I mean, clearly we're not sitting A.J. Green, but the offense had been working so good. How much does it hurt to lose an integral piece?
I think they've been all right without him. I mean, you mentioned Kroft. He had 7 touchdowns last season. C.J. Uzomah has outsnapped Kroft so far, so it's an interesting. The tight end position is interesting. I mean,
they were playing all 3 guys. All 3 guys kind of had specific roles. We'll see how that shakes up. But no concerns for you for Boyd or
no, it's not. And it's nice to see Tyler Boyd. It's nice to see somebody outside of AJ Green kind of do their thing on a consistent basis with Andy Dalton. I mean, for the last, it feels like a decade, we've seen Andy Dalton and AJ Green just lean on Green, and when Tyler Eifert's healthy, which is not often, use Eifert. Obviously, John Ross is there, the burner, and Gio Bernard's getting the football a ton with a hurt Joe Mixon. So it's nice to see Boyd kind of come into his own. It looks like there's some cohesiveness. So I don't know that the loss of Tyler Eifert is going to crush them, because they do have quite a wide receiver duo there and somewhat of a running game.
Yeah, this offense has been going great guns ever since Bill Lazor took over and installed his own scheme over the offseason. This is working out. So, okay, I'm going to hit you. The biggest story of the week, I'm going to hit you both up on this, get your opinions. I was talking to Dale Lawley, a longtime Pittsburgh Steelers beat writer, 25 years or so he's been covering the Steelers, talking to him Saturday night. His impression at the time, one that's widely shared, was that Le'Veon Bell isn't showing up this year. Basically, look, he didn't show up. What's the point of showing up week 10 if he thinks he's just going to get franchised again? He's not worried about the accrued season because he doesn't think they'll franchise him. All of a sudden, out of the clear blue yesterday, Le'Veon Bell decides he's coming back week 7 during the bye. He'd like to get that $850,000 paycheck for the off week, which he would be due if he did report and sign the franchise tender. The thought is maybe he could be ready to play week 8 against the Cleveland Browns. Couple things. The Steelers could put a stick in his spokes by putting him on the roster exempt list. They would not have to pay him for 2 weeks. Another possibility, look, something changed really quickly here. Could it be that the Steelers called him up and said, look, man, we can't trade you unless you're here? And maybe that was the lure he needed. If that's the case, I mean, maybe that would explain a sudden change of heart. Because the day before, when Earl Thomas was flipping off the Seattle Seahawks for getting injured in the exact same situation, not the exact same situation, but he wanted a new deal, and he got hurt. Bell tweeted, "This is why I'm doing this," essentially, right? So something has changed. I'll start with you, Kyle, and I'll get to you, Justin. You're a Bell owner right now. What are you doing with him?
I think we talked about this last week, and I'm still on board. You're holding him, and now you can at least be optimistically holding him. I think before we were just saying that the upside is so there, and we're not sure if you can get much of an offer in a trade right now. But now the upside seems much more realistic. I think you have to hold him and just hope he comes back then, and hope that he's hitting on all cylinders by weeks 9, 10, and he can bring you those last few regular season weeks and really get you into the fantasy playoffs. But definitely have to hold him right now. I'm not, obviously now with this news, you can't cut him, and I'm not even going to look to trade him yet because I still have the feeling that no one is as confident as you should.
Right, and Justin, I guess that's the thing. What would it take to pry Bell from your pudgy little fingers?
my pudgy little fingers. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about arguably the best running back in the NFL, and he's a sure shot for about 30 touches. The guy doesn't leave the field. He doesn't miss blocks. I don't think he's ever missed a block, and he'll tell you that. So he's a running back that you want. They line him up. He's a 70, 80 reception running back. So whether he stays with Pittsburgh, whether he's traded, he has. In the timing of this, like Kyle said, I mean, you're gonna hold him unless I'm getting a Ferrari for him at this point in time, because he's gonna play football, and the timing is perfect. By the time he gets his regular season legs underneath him, it'll be coasting into fantasy playoff time, which is usually weeks 14 in most leagues. And now you have a clear-cut RB1 on your roster. So it's going to take a lot. It's still, obviously there's not a lot of certainty right now with Le'Veon Bell, but, things are looking on the up and up like he's going to be playing football. So unless I get something really good for him, you're just going to hold on to him and because you drafted him for a reason.
Yes, things are afoot, and Justin did nail it. I mean, once they get rolling, and especially when the Steelers hit November, it's 30 carries. I mean, it's well over 25. I mean, and they'll throw to him. So you're right. We'll need to see him get up to speed. We'll see if there are any developments. We'll see if the Steelers, do a little roster exemption game to keep from paying him. If that has an impact, still a lot of moving pieces. Mike Tomlin, by the way, asked to comment on this report on Tuesday. Basically said, I ain't heard a damn thing. So that's where we stand. And, so interesting story going forward. Let's dig into the DFS, fellas. I'll start with you, Justin. What games are you looking at this week as your prime fields of fire?
Well, right off the bat, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Falcons. It has the ingredients of a shootout, and I'm going to want to stack that game just about 9 out of 10 times, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger or Matt Ryan. In fact, before we spoke tonight, gentlemen, I Antonio Brown, Julio line up with some Vance McDonald. So that's a game that I'm certainly looking at. 56.5 is the over-under. It's a close spread with the Steelers being a 4-point favorite. I also like the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers game. These two teams have a history. So there are some – look, gentlemen, it's no surprise that, when we talk about quarterbacks, it's a pass-happy league. So these over-unders are high in just about every single game. So there's some goodness in almost all these games. There's not a lot of 10-3 games anymore. But first and foremost, it's certainly going to be Pittsburgh Steelers and the Atlanta Falcons, fireworks galore, permitting the weather's terrible in Pittsburgh Sunday.
Kyle, and by the way, just to add to what Justin was saying, through 4 games, the NFL has seen 3,030 points scored, breaks the previous record of 2,986 points through 3 games scored in 2012. So it's 344 touchdowns scored so far this year. That's the most through 4 weeks in NFL history, too, breaking the old mark of 332 set in 2015. Of those 344, 288 were touchdown passes, which is a fair amount more than the old record of 205 set in 2013. All these numbers from Pro Football Talk. So, Kyle, what is the game you are targeting, good sir?
Definitely on board with Justin with this one. It is prime time stacking in the Pittsburgh-Atlanta game right now. 57.5 point over under, by far the highest on the slate. But then if we're looking at something a little more interesting, I'd like to go to the Kansas City-Jacksonville game. I think if there's any chance people are scared off of playing any part of the Kansas City offense against Jacksonville, I'm willing to run. We always talk about when people see this burning house, we run in and find the value. I'm willing to run in and get the value on that one.
That's Bob.
I'm willing to run in and get the value on this one because I think people significantly overweigh the ability of a defense to limit the fantasy goodness of a great offense. We saw last year when Jimmy Garoppolo got to face this defense. He played really well, and that was a great week for fantasy. I think we could see something similar with Kansas City. And then if Leonard Fournette's out, that means Blake Bortles is throwing a lot. Yeah, he's throwing a lot against the Kansas City defense. Yep. I will be attacking this one specifically from the Jacksonville side in a lot of ways because I want to get exposure to teams playing the Kansas City defense.
Right, you could play any of those top 3 wideouts that are all essentially de facto wide receiver ones. Well, 1 week it's going to be Cole, 1 week it's going to be Moncrief, 1 week it's going to be D.D. Westbrook. Some weeks it's going to be 2 of them, like last week. So I think you're exactly right on that one, and it's one that I like an awful lot as well.
What about Mahomes? What do you guys do with Mahomes?
He's probably going to be pretty pricey, so maybe given the matchup and the price, the ownership will be very low. Maybe in tournaments, that's a guy I actually want to play. Look, the Jags aren't an unstoppable. So we get these notions in our head, right? And I think Kyle touched on it. Wow, that's a tough matchup. Well, hell, just don't touch it. Just stay away from it. Well, Xavier Rhodes has games where he gives up points to players. Everyone, all these things that we get in our head, these notions. Yes, it's a hard matchup, but points are scored, production is created, and under many circumstances. So it would be a contrarian play. There's no doubt about it, given the circumstances, especially the pricing. I just think people will be laying off because the price will be high. But I'm not going to Justin will be surprised to learn this Mahomes kid is good.
My God, is he good.
Bob, let me give you a surprise. Patrick Mahomes is only the 7th highest priced quarterback because DraftKings has now moved to where they basically price based on the defense you play. And I didn't realize how much they are pricing him down based on the defense he plays. Jacksonville's a great defense. It is one of the best defenses I've seen in my lifetime, my short, small, tiny young boy lifetime. But it's not Patrick Mahomes' 7th highest quarterback. And as we move into quarterbacks, he's the cash guy for me.
That changes because I think what we saw in Denver is that he's not just a guy who throws a lot of touchdowns. He's a winning quarterback. He's a guy that can lead a team to victory without throwing 4 touchdowns, turns out, and plays pretty damn well. So interesting play there. So I like that one. Let's move to running back. Kyle, top plays at running back in the different ranges.
Yeah, right now in cash, I'm looking at Melvin Gordon. Even though he hasn't seen a ton of rushing value, it's all happening in the receiving game. 8.5 targets per game. He's seen 30 points in 3 of his 4, 30 fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games, and now they're 5.5 point favorites. That's the game script I'm looking for Melvin Gordon. And should Leonard Fournette sit out because of an injury, I want all the TJ Yeldon at 5,600.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the propensity to give him the ball, and I want anyone who's getting the ball against the Kansas City defense, and Yeldon is that guy.
Jags, by the way, week 9 bye. Don't be surprised if you don't see Leonard Fournette until after that.
I won't be. I don't think any of us would be surprised.
Right, I don't think so. Justin, who do you like in the lower range price? Who are some of the values, the bargain basement guys that you see this week? And what's the high price guy you must pay for?
I'm with Kyle in terms of Melvin Gordon. I think Gurley's not a bad play against a Seattle run defense that has not been good, but it's a Rams offense that just there's so many different pieces. It's a lot to spend for Todd Gurley, but I think Gordon. Top notch feels right at 8,600. I do like Christian McCaffrey at home against the Giants at 8K. I think he's a lock for at least 20 points. But if I move down, we talk about these platoons and committees. I think that Aaron Jones against the Detroit Lions is a solid play. If I'm guaranteed that Aaron Jones is going to get the football 15, 16 times, I'm pretty happy with him at 40.
Where do you get that guarantee? I want that.
You're not going to get it because Ty Montgomery's in the equation. I mean, it is a committee, but I think that the three of us tonight can agree that Aaron Rodgers likes Aaron Jones, and that says a lot. So, look, 11 carries, 65 yards last week, 1 touchdown. He only had 1 reception, 1 target, so, not that involved in the passing game, but that's why they have Ty Montgomery. So I'm with Aaron Jones. I love running, obviously we like Green Bay Packers offenses, and I'll tell you, I like what I saw out of Kareem Hunt last night at 5,800. Kyle mentioned the Jacksonville Chiefs game. There could be some fireworks there. Kareem Hunt is going to get the ball over 20 times. Doesn't matter who they're going to play. At 5,800, under 6K, you're getting a top 5 or 6 volume running back in the NFL. Give me some Kareem Hunt. I think he makes a fantastic tournament play, and I would have to agree with TJ Yeldon as well. On the other side. So 5,600 seems there, but there's not a ton this week that I can see that's jumping out at me in terms of, running backs in the 4 or 5K range that I'm loving. So I'm either paying up or I'm going to have a guy like Aaron Jones and some Yeldon at this point in time. Of course, It's only Tuesday night, gentlemen. So there's obviously revelations. Yep.
But I kind of went, last week doing my tournament lineups, I kind of went cheap at wide receiver and made out reasonably well and I ended up with, Kamara and Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
As my starting running backs, and that's how you break even sometimes when you're playing the tournaments. And by the way, Justin, good call by you. I saw floating through your Twitter box about David Johnson going up against the Seahawks. I thought you might carry that over to Gurley this week because it was a super matchup, and but the pricing was right on Johnson last week. You were right about that.
Hey, Bob, Kyle won $2,000 on DraftKings. Won a tournament.
See, he did better than breaking even. He broke 2 evens.
That's what we call that, breaking a few evens.
Yes. Look, but for me, breaking even is winning. Not losing is winning. So I've had a couple of those 1,000 type dollar wins. It's very nice. Fun way to watch football. Congratulations, Kyle. I'm glad
Thank you, sir.
What was the keys to the win?
It was DraftKings tiers, and moving on to wide receivers, it was Corey Davis was the big one, super low on last week, and popped off. It was a late in the morning pivot. Just thought get some low ownership for some tournament exposure, and nearly 10 targets a game now, and he finally had this breakout game against a good Philly defense. I don't think they're quite as good as we saw last year, but he wasn't going up against Kansas City. I think it's a legitimate defense, and that makes him a cash play for me this week. But after the pop-off, his ownership's going to be crazy. I like his targets, but his ownership's too much to make him a tournament play.
Yeah, I thought the surprise there was that Marcus Mariota was throwing the ball reasonably well. That was a bit of a surprise. So let's dig into the wide receivers. Justin, who's your high-end plays this week?
Well, back to the Steelers and Falcons game. I'm not getting off Julio Jones now. I mean, he's going to get in the end zone eventually, right? And I think is he not? So it's
currently on pace for 2,000 yards and 0 touchdowns.
It's
2,000 yards and no touchdowns isn't the worst thing I've ever.
They're
heard.
Unpredictable. We know this, but there's no sense getting off of him now. We know he's going to have over 100 yards receiving, and the Steelers are atrocious. So it's going to be, if I'm paying up, it's going to be Antonio Brown. It's going to be Julio Jones because I am going to stack that game for certain. And if I'm paying a little bit down, gentlemen, a lot needs to be said for Golden Tate and what he's done over the last 4 or 5 years. He's always healthy. He's a lock for about 8 to 15 targets every single week. Not a high touchdown guy. Like we said, they're unpredictable, but in PPR formats, I think he's a lock for about 20 points every single week. Just, in spite of having Kenny Golladay come into his own and Marvin Jones. So it's going to be those three that I'm going to key in on. It's nice as a fan to see what Corey Davis did with Marcus Mariota last week. A lot of cynics about Corey Davis and Marcus Mariota. So, Kyle, I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think the price is up on Corey Davis, so that might scare people off. But look, Corey Davis, I think, is the future of the NFL at wide receiver. He's going to be it's only a matter of time until he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. So, and I'll probably in tournaments be on Amari Cooper too, and we've all been burned by him as well.
Yeah, he's a little bit up and down. So the next question is, Kyle, which wide receivers are going to win me $2,000 this week?
I don't know about win you $2,000, but in terms of cashing some of these lineups, I like D.D. Westbrook in this game.
Ooh.
Like I said, we're attacking this game in any way, and it's a bit of a coin flip between these guys as we talked about. But if I'm picking one, and if you're setting multiple lineups, you get multiple guys throughout these lineups.
Sure.
If I'm picking one, give me D.D. Westbrook at 4,700, just priced under Keelan Cole, but he leads the team in receiving yards, reception, and targets. I think this is a matchup I'm looking to get into, and I'm looking to pay down from Keelan Cole just a little bit at D.D. Westbrook, who I think was really talented in college and is flashing that right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me get my wetsuit on so I can dive into the sea of mediocrity here without feeling too filthy.
Be prepared. Be prepared.
Justin, it's time. Let's bathe in the tight end glory. Who you like this week? Give me some in all price ranges.
Not much.
Don't pick a tight end. Just leave it blank.
Not much. I mean, I will say this, and his price is too high. You absolutely nailed George Kittle. I listened to you guys last week. Of course, I wasn't on. George Kittle, with his best friend, made some music. But do I feel like spending $5,400? No. I think I'm going to have the most exposure to another Pittsburgh Steeler, and that's going to be Vance McDonald. He's back. Ben Roethlisberger likes him. 5-6 targets seems to be the number for players in the sea of mediocrity. You're kind of okay with that. You're kind of okay between getting 10 to 15 points and just kind of moving along. So I see Vance McDonald, and I think I'll probably have why not have some George Kittle at home against a bad Cardinals team. There's a clear rapport there, and there's not a lot of weaponry outside of George Kittle on the Niners, so I could see him having 10 targets and maybe another 20-point game. He had 27.5 last week.
Cardinals not the best against stopping opposing tight ends. Kyle, who you like this week?
Bob, how would you feel if I told you could have the tight end one right now for just $4,800? Is that something you're interested in?
I want that so
Let
bad.
me introduce you to a man named Jared Cook. Right now, he is the number one tight end in the league, being showered with targets.
He's a top 10 wide receiver.
Yep.
I know. being showered with targets right now, and I think this is a game where we all thought the Chargers defense was going to be really good, and now they've been beaten up by injuries, and their middle-of-the-road defense when it comes to defending tight ends put a lot of targets into that, and I'm fine buying Jared Cook for his target floor at $4,800. DraftKings just doesn't seem to know that he's the tight end one. He's priced as a tight end 5 right now, and I'll buy that all day.
Most of his productions come at home, and I feel like he's been in the league 15 years, but he is certainly a freak.
I feel like 4 games is all we get out of him every year, and we already got our 4.
We've already had.
I'm going to keep riding this. I'm going to keep riding it until it goes away, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick went away.
Real quick.
So, right. So I guess, I wanted to ask about Ricky Seals-Jones because he was, look, I'm not saying Josh Rosen's good. You guys know I thought he was one of the better guy in this rookie class. I thought we saw flashes of that, at least look competent and somewhat confident, and that's a hell of a lot better than what his predecessor looked. But do any of the guys on the lower end of the Arizona depth chart interest you beyond Ricky Seals-Jones? I mean, we saw Chad Williams get targeted, maybe not running the best routes, but a pretty athletic receiver. We saw Christian Kirk get a little more. Or is just a hope here that he turns David Johnson back into David Johnson, and if you get a week out of Ricky Seals-Jones, good on you.
I think we're gonna see David Johnson come to his own right now, and it's outside of Larry Fitzgerald. We want to see him do well, don't we? But if the Arizona Cardinals are going to score points, it's going to go through David Johnson, DJ. It was nice to see Christian Kirk a couple weeks ago perform well, but this is not a good football team, and I tend to agree. I mean, our colleague John Laub had Rosen as about the top quarterback in this draft. I think there were some a bit of character issues that we've touched on, but this is DJ, and you're still getting DJ on the cheap. You're getting David Johnson this week at 6,300. We talk about Le'Veon Bell. You got to put David Johnson in terms of volume right up there with him. So we didn't touch on him. Give me some David Johnson this week for certain.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every week. It was funny. I was just looking at the overall stats today, and it struck me that everybody you drafted to be, first round running backs. I mean, we wrote down the ranks here. Alvin Kamara, number 1, Todd Gurley, number 2, Melvin Gordon, number 3, Ezekiel Elliott, number 4, Saquon Barkley, number 5, Kareem Hunt, number 7. Didn't have James White at number 9. I drafted the hell out of Marshawn Lynch and didn't expect him at number 10. How Adrian Peterson's at number 11 baffles me. But David Johnson at number 13 certainly was an expectation. He needs to turn that around. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Kyle, give me some final thoughts, anything that you want to touch on that you have not touched on yet tonight.
I think we've still got defenses, and one sneaky defense I'm looking for is the Jets at 2,600 at home. Right now, home favorites against the second most interception-prone quarterback in Case Keenum. That's a matchup I can get myself into for the cheap in tournament lineups. I don't think they have a great floor because they're still the Jets. They're not amazing. And Case Keenum has looked good. He's thrown a lot of touchdowns. Just picks have been there as well. But that's when you're looking to get crazy tournament defenses, you just want to have a few extra chances at scoring a touchdown potentially, and turnovers where you're going to do that. So that's the tourney defense I'm looking at. Justin, you have a cash defense you want to sell me on?
Look, I locked in again prior to the show. I made one lineup, and the New York Jets were my team at home, 2,600 against the Broncos. I find it humorous. The Titans are as much as they are at Buffalo, but we've come to the conclusion that you really don't have to spend a ton of money to have a successful week out of defenses. There hasn't been a ton of reliability, but I'm looking at the Jets, and that's just about it. Of course, it's only Tuesday, but I agree with you wholeheartedly, Kyle.
Yeah, the week 1 Jets are saying, us. Don't forget us. And I would agree with that. And I guess, I'll hit you up for some final thoughts here, Justin, as well. I'll just go ahead and throw out the notion that I'm having right now is we should see some normalization. A lot of the things we expected to happen from the get-go that really we should get used to them not happening from the get-go. We'll start seeing those things more coming to pass as the offenses emerge and evolve and finally turn into the things that we expected them to be or hoped they would be coming out of the chute. So take heart, people, if you're struggling through September. You think you have the right guys, don't go waiver wire crazy. Look at your point totals more than you look at your win and loss record right now before you start making any crazy moves. Yeah,
and we agreed that September is the extension of August, right? September is the new preseason. I get hundreds of questions a week about it. So many people panic, and my mentality is, look, you drafted your team in season-long leagues for a reason. Let things just happen. I suppose, DFS being this new animal kind of salvages fantasy football when your teams do tank, but it's way too early to give up on your season-long leagues.
And Kyle? Final thoughts?
Yeah, play more DFS if you're struggling in the regular season. In the redraft season, just hop on a DFS because that's
where you win like $2,000 at a tournament. I thought you were going to advise us where to meet you for dinner that you were going to buy, but apparently not. All right.
No, he took his girlfriend out.
We'll go to McDonald's. I'll be in a McDonald's in Columbus somewhere, and I'm just getting fries.
And
water.
Gentlemen, while we're on DFS, of course, this show is sponsored by DraftKings, and bragging rights and huge cash prizes are up for grabs this weekend and all season long at DraftKings, the leader in 1 week fantasy sports. How huge? We're talking over $1 million in total prizes with 1 week fantasy at DraftKings. You choose when you play. There's no commitment. Draft a new team every week at DraftKings. The general manager, Bob. Just choose your team, stand with the salary cap, and see how your team stacks up against the competition. No matter what your skill level is, there's a contest waiting for you. DraftKings. So if you're thinking about trying to play 1 week fantasy football, the time is now, because nothing makes fantasy football Sunday more exciting when you have a DraftKings lineup on the line. And you can play free with your first deposit to and compete for your share of over $1 million in total prizes. Like Sigmund Bloom says in our intro, make a cash deposit, get a free $3 ticket. Go to DraftKings.com or download the app today using our code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS, to enter our contest for free this weekend with your first deposit and compete for your share of over $1 million in total prizes. That is DIEHARDS. That's the code. Only at DraftKings. The game inside the game. I was eating lobster rolls in the DraftKings suite at Gillette this past
week. What are you
week.
not eating?
I know. Always. This was fun, guys, and it's good to be back.
Good to have you back.
It's good to have you back indeed. Play DraftKings, play Redraft, do it all, and of course, like, subscribe, whatever the kids do these days. You've been listening to Football Diehards podcast with your host, Bob Harris, at Football Diehard, Justin Lonero, at Justin Lonero, and myself, at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for tuning in.